Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. Today I'm going to be continuing on this wonderful Friday. By the way, I hope you're having a good Friday. My Friday the 13th reviews. This one is for part 4, the final chapter. I've had this DVD forever, and I love it. DVD is not irrelevant. Stop saying that. It's just Blu-ray is more expensive, and 4K is even more expensive, so stop being dumb. Buy DVDs while they're cheap. Anyway, Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, was supposed to be the OG ending of this series, and man, if it had been, it would have been one hell of an ending for this series and this whole franchise. But I love a lot of other things that came from this film and onward, so this is kind of the beginning of the reviews that will be super popular most of the time, in positivity, I mean. Anyway, before I get into that, I want to make a couple of corrections and a couple of things I need to address that I either flubbed or forgot. Number one, this video is a collaboration with my boy Stranger Grayson, who started this idea about reviewing these together. And his channel description, or his link to his channel, will be in my description section of my video. But I also found out sort of kind of yesterday and kind of the day before. I wasn't really sure for clear on this until yesterday, whether this guy would be in on this or not. But there's also a third collaborator with he and I. His channel is called Horror Channels, aka Goosebumps Boy, I believe. He changes his channel a little bit sometimes. Not super frequently, but enough that it confuses me because I'm easy to confuse. And he's a good reviewer as well. I have him in the I have the link. I cannot talk. I have the link to his channel as well in the description section of my video alongside Stranger Grayson. So go check him out as well. Support the guy. Anyway, for now, let's talk about Friday the 13th Part 3. Yes, Part 3, before I get into Part 4 that this video is about. I forgot a couple of things in my review for Part 3 from yesterday, and I figured I should address them now because somebody brought them to my attention. I don't know what I was thinking. As much as I hate certain elements of Part 3, and at the moment have rated it lower than most of these movies that I'm going to talk about, I gotta tell you, a couple of things that I hate even more in that film I completely forgot. One in particular is Shelly. Just in case, since I forgot about it, in case you didn't see the comment I left to somebody else, I fucking hate Shelly. Shelly is the most obnoxious thing about these movies, and I mean that. I think he is the worst character in all of Friday the 13th. Out of all the things I hate about Friday the 13th, in the really bad entries, he is it. He is the embodiment of that. Not the actor. I don't blame him. It's the performance. It's the writing, the acting, all of that. It's all of that combined that make me hate Shelly so much in that movie. But I wanted to make sure I address that before I get into it, because this guy is annoying. Really annoying. Moving along, what was the other thing somebody brought to my attention? Someone tried to explain the plot to me in the comments about the blind date thing. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't care. It's so stupid and so flimsy as a plot element that I don't care. So Part 3 is as bad as I remember it being every time I've ever watched it, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Let's move along to Part 4, though. I had to address the Shelly thing, man. I'm sorry. Had to waste some time on this video for that. Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. What is this movie about? Well, after the events of Part 3, this one picks up immediately after that, and from what somebody told me, apparently Part 2, 3, and 4 are, like, day-to-day connected. Like, the one is on Friday the 13th, as in Part 2 is on Friday the 13th. Then Part 3 is Saturday the 14th. And then this is Sunday the 15th on this movie, which is bizarre, but it's still Part 4. And Jason was just taken to the morgue after the events of Part 3, where he had the axe in his head laying on the ground in the barn. And basically, they take him to the morgue, and he gets back up and kills a couple people. He escapes, and he goes on a rampage once again in the same kind of camping area. I guess it's surrounding Camp Crystal Lake, somewhere in New Jersey. I don't know. And he's going after just kind of random people. One in particular that he goes for, or one group of people in particular he goes for, is a group of partying kids. There's like 5 or 6 of them, one of them being Crispin Glover from Back to the Future. He's really fun here, by the way. I really like him and his best friend Ted. I think their chemistry is really fun, how they interact, how they banter and bicker. It's really funny stuff. Some really good jokes in here, by the way, too, but I'll get to that in a moment with the writing. But the group of kids are, like, to me, the first group of kids. The number one, I actually know some of their names. And number two, they're not obnoxious. I actually like all of them, even down to the 2 twins that live locally that come to hang out and party with them. And across the street, there is another house that's a family. It's Tommy Jarvis. It's the Jarvis family in general. It's a mom, a single mom, then her oldest daughter, who is beautiful. The mom's beautiful too. But it's those two and the youngest brother named Tommy Jarvis, played by Corey Feldman. Yes, from The Goonies, from Lost Boys. He's an icon. Say whatever you want about the guy and about the things that he says, but he's an icon. He's a horror icon. He's an acting icon. He's an 80s icon, dude. The guy matters so much. He's such an important figure in 1980s media of any sort. I don't care what we're talking about. The dude is an important guy. I love Corey Feldman. He makes stuff fun to watch. I don't care what it is, but I grew up on a lot of stuff that he was in, like Lost Boys. I've never seen Goonies, so that doesn't really count. I've seen like maybe one part of the entire movie in my entire life. And I might even own that. I don't know. I might have bought it recently in like the last 6 months and just forgot I put it to the side. I have a stack of movies I had to pack up because we're getting ready to move, so you're going to start seeing this bookshelf stuff start to empty out behind me over the weeks that are coming up. But we're moving, and that's going to be a major pain in the ass to try to do videos and do that and have a sloppy, empty background behind me. But that's all I can tell you. Anyway, so the Jarvis family, I love. I think all three of them are really good. They give a great performance. Corey Feldman, even though he's very young, he couldn't be more than 8 or 9 here. He killed it. He's so good. The oldest sister, beautiful, wonderful performance. The mom, beautiful, wonderful performance. Again, the group of kids across the street that are just hanging out and partying. I like all of them. I think they did a really good job, even if I don't remember some of their names or don't really think they have the most character writing that actually matters, which it doesn't in a Friday the 13th film. Who gives a shit? But Jason himself, I don't know who played him. I didn't take out the time to look at this. But let me tell you this. This guy is the best out of the first 4 movies. Of course, the first film doesn't count, but out of the previous 2, and this one, he is the OG. If there had only been 4 Friday the 13th movies, this would be the best one. Overall. In quality, in filmmaking, everything. His performance as Jason is wonderful. The design for Jason is so much more improved to me, even though it's basically the same outfit but a little bit different than Part 3's. It looks better in design with Jason. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Now, where do I even go from this point on? What do I even talk about? There's kind of like a subplot in this movie I can talk about. And it's about a guy whose sister was killed in one of the previous films. And I think they said it was part 1. I believe somebody had mentioned that online somewhere. And I think in the film they kind of hinted to that too. But he had a sister who was murdered. And he finds out that Jason's body escaped from the morgue. Nobody knows if he's alive or dead or if somebody took it. So he comes back into the area to go hunt down Jason to see if he's alive. He thinks he's probably alive. He's probably going to go kill the guy, if he can. And that kind of crosses paths with the Jarvis family. And I like this guy that's hunting down the killer of his sister. That's a really cool little subplot, and I like that actor a lot too. He's really good. Very manly, kind of reminds me of Henry Cavill a little bit. But moving along though, what can I talk about now? There's so much to say with this movie. By the way, it came out in 1984, 2 years after the previous movie. I didn't realize that. I was pretty sure that every single one came out the year after the previous one because they were so quick to put together. But no, 2 years later, this came out in 1984. It's about an hour and a half, by the way. Let's talk about, I guess, the writing. Let's go into that since I've already kind of briefly touched on the characters on my list. The writing, for me, took a massive increase over the previous 3 films. But it's not like a high-quality film. You know, recently I saw a film with Marlon Brando called One-Eyed Jacks, and it was incredible. It was such a great movie, dude. The writing for that film really showed me, as I watched it, that 2-hour and I think 20-minute long movie, how incredible screenwriting used to be. And I know a lot of 1980s films sometimes had that. Not always. They kind of went into more of the teenage camp that people accuse modern films of going into, but they did it... What the hell was that? Did you guys hear that shit? I guess they hit a pothole or something outside with a massive-ass truck, and it just scared the shit out of me. That was so loud, dude. I don't know if it was as loud for you as it was for me, but oh my god. Thought it was an explosion outside. I thought somebody's house was going to be gone when I looked out there. Anyway, back to what I was saying, since I got distracted. God, dude, that really fucked me up. So, the writing is better than the previous couple of films. It's not much better than most slashers, if I'm being honest with you. Maybe better than most slashers at the time, because the humor here is fantastic. And that's a little bit accredited to not only the writing, but also the directing and the acting for that. I think the casting was really good for a lot of these jokes, like the dead fuck joke that Ted and Crispin Glover keep saying constantly. I really like them in this movie. That's really the main basis for humor that really works in here. And mixing that with the really violent kills and stuff, the really, really violent kills, even though this film is kind of censored a lot of the time, the kills are incredible. The kills are incredible. I'll get to that in a little bit too. But the writing of setting up for each of these kills, the writing of blending in humor with that in between is really well done. It's really well done. To me, this is the actual beginning of what Friday the 13th is as we know it. A lot of people accuse Friday the 13th of being, Friday the 13th Part 3 of being that. I think that's bullshit, and I said that in my review. To me, that is not Jason. To me, that is just annoying. I don't think it's good. I think it kind of sucks ass. People defend that because they're nostalgic about it, and I really mean that. It's just like with me. I'm a massive defender of Star Wars prequels, and I will stand by the fact that I love them deeply. They are not fucking flawed. Well, they are flawed, but you know what I mean. Like, they're not bad movies like everybody on the internet and the entire sphere of pessimism that is the internet decided to accuse them of. They're not bad movies. Get over it. Whereas the previous 3 films of Friday the 13th, aside from Part 2, you could kind of consider them to be bad movies. If they're not up your taste, or you think the writing is shit or whatever, you're not really wrong. You look at some of the 1960s and 70s movies that came out, even though I'm not a big fan of those 1970s movies. But if you look at a lot of 1940s, 50s, and 60s movies, the writing was incredible on those compared to something like Friday the 13th or Part 3, you know? It's a shame, but it's true. You look at it like Halloween. Halloween is better written than the first 3 Friday the 13th, in my personal opinion. But Part 4, I think it's really well done with how they blended all of that together. The humor, the kills, the violence, the suspense, all of that's very well blended. But I do agree with somebody else that I talk to all the time. He is on one channel called Goosebumps Completionist. His newer channel that he changed the title to is called Horror FFA. That FFA stands for Free For All. So it's Horror Free For All. He's a great YouTuber as well. You might see him in the comments, I don't know. I love the dude's content. He's a good friend of mine. Love his work, dude. Addictive videos. If you like my kind of style with the not editing thing, the dude's content, the kind of subjects he touches on, I love the dude's work. And he's one of those people like Stranger Grayson and Goosebumps Boy that I watch constantly. But Horror FFA, I keep wanting to say MFA. What does that even mean? Anyway, he had made mention about how every time he watches this film, he likes it a little bit less. And he ain't wrong, man. You know, this is kind of the same case with me for this film, as horrible as that sounds to say, and as much as I've obsessed and talked about and loved this movie so far in my review, that is something I notice about myself. I've watched this film a billion times, dude. It's one of my most rewatched Friday films. And I will tell you straight out, this movie, the more I watch it, the more kind of bored I get with it. And it's just the Friday syndrome. You're there for the kills. It takes a little while to get there a lot of the time. Not all the films have suspense to get to those really good kills, if they have really good kills. It's kind of an issue with some of the movies. But I agree with him that this film, the older I get, the less and less I like it. But I also admire the fact if I can acknowledge, just like with Lord of the Rings, I'm not a Lord of the Rings guy at all. I can't stand the shit. I think it's boring. But I can look at it and I can see the filmmaking of it, or even the writing of Tolkien when I read The Hobbit, and I can tell the quality behind both of those things, the films and the original material. You can tell how much love and passion were put into those projects, whether I think they should be edited or not, or fixed, or more interesting, or whatever I think they should be. I can admire and I can acknowledge the quality of those things. That's how I feel with this movie. It's so well made. It's a beautiful looking film compared to part 1, 2, and 3. It's a massive improvement for the series, and for me, this is the beginning, like I said, the revving of the engine to really make Friday the 13th and Jason Voorhees himself what he will be to me from this point onward. And I love it. I love it for that. And it helps me admire and love this film and have more patience with it every time I come back to watch it each year. Because yes, I do watch this one basically every single year, and basically have since I was probably 10 or 11. I used to watch this on TV all the time for the AMC Horror Fest in October. It was great times, man. But this is a good, solid film that even though I find myself getting bored with parts of it, the majority of it I still love. It just takes a little time to get to the parts that I really love in the latter half of the movie. And moving along, though, again, I talked about the cinematography. It's beautifully directed by Joe Zito. If you don't know who Joe Zito is, he's done a lot of really good work out there. I really like a lot of his stuff. He was involved with things like... shit, I'm really bad with names. I'm completely forgetting about his career and what he did, but I know his name. That should tell you a lot. If I know his name, the person who forgets names all the time, then it matters, just so you know. The screenwriter for this worked a lot on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Yes, that Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which was surprising to me as I found that out more and more. But that works, because the humor in here works really well, just like in that show. I love that show. Now, the look of it, like I said, the shots of it, the locations they shot at were wonderful. I love all of that. But let's move along to my favorite thing in this movie, and it correlates with Jason mainly. The practical effects. Tom Savini came back to do the effects for this film. The guy who did it for the OG original film. His skills had improved so much by this time, 4 years down the road. I guess 3 while they made it in that time frame. And the guy's talent is undeniable. The amount of quality that he puts out, Tom Savini is wonderful. He just absolutely is. And his work here, to me, crafted what Friday the 13th is, again, from this point onward. Whether Savini's involved or not from this point on, I don't think he was, but it doesn't matter. The amount of quality on the makeup and the practical effects that they use for these films from this point onward are incredible. Typically, if they don't cut it out of the film like they did with Part 7, you get to see those effects, and you get to see how effective they are, as a matter of fact, how horrific they can look. The effects in this film, the kills, the violence, it is fantastic. These have to be, to me, the best kills up to this point in the entire series. Up to Part 4, these are the best. They beat out 3, 2, and 1's kills. I don't care what anybody says, I think the best kills of those first 4 films, the original series that were going to die out at this movie, this has the best ones. Again, this would have been a hell of a note to end the series on back in the day because of how good the kills are still to this day, and how effective and realistic they look still to this day. And I like certain things like with Tommy, for example, being like a... Tommy Jarvis is named after Tom Savini, just in case you didn't know, and he's like a little kid that's like into making masks and monsters and that kind of thing. He is supposed to be like Tom Savini, and I love that. That's a good self-insert. That's not like the modern day SJW Marvel Comics self-insert bullshit that they don't understand why it sells. It's because you're a boring person. Nobody fucking cares about you inserting yourself into a fucking book. That's just a matter. But somebody that's like Tom Savini, who has the kind of life he has, they're interesting. They're interesting people, and Tommy Jarvis in this film is an interesting character based around that. I love it. It's great. It shows how smart and how clever this kid is. And I love that. It's so good. But the practical effects are second to none on almost anything in this whole series. They are wonderful. The setup for the kills, fantastic. A lot of the suspense leading to those kills can be really good most of the time, I think. Let's talk about the music. I'm pretty sure Harry Manfredini came back once again to do the music for this movie. And I think it's better than the music in Part 2 and Part 3, and most of Part 1 with the Friday the 13th theme music you typically hear with the cellos and the violins and all that shit I keep talking about every single review. The music here to me is sharper. And it kind of got sharper with Part 3 a little bit. Kinda. It wasn't ruining scenes like it was in Part 1 sometimes. Or even Part 2 for that matter. But here it feels really sharp, like it nails the moments that it really needs to amp up, and when it really needs to kind of put a period on a scene, you know what I mean? Like it really, really lands, and it's really good. I love it a lot. And that's pretty much all of my thoughts about Friday the 13th, the final chapter, aka Part 4. What a great cover, by the way. What a great, great cover. I used to see a box set at Target years ago when I was a kid, and it had the pictures from the back of this film with Tommy and his mask and that guy in the shower on the back of the set. And I remember seeing that and how much I wanted to check out the film because I thought there was like an alien in one of these movies I hadn't seen because of the Tommy Jarvis mask on the back of there. And little did I know that I had already seen the movie. I didn't realize that mask was in that movie. Great flick. Really love this. Really think it's a good, rewatchable film. To me, it's probably the first truly rewatchable of any of these films. As much as I love Part 2, I think this is truly more rewatchable, even though I have boring moments in it. And I saw it a lot more than I saw Part 2, so that's a little bit of an effective thing to say right there about my feelings about the two different films I both love quite a bit. This is such an incredible movie. And again, if it had been the last one back in the day, it's a hell of a note to end on, man. But now the title of the film, the final chapter, is useless. Completely useless. Because of what happened with where they kept going. And I'm glad they kept going, because I enjoy, from this point onward, most of the stuff, I would say. Very few do I dislike at all. So we'll get to that later on. When it comes to Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, if I had to rate this one on a 5-star basis, I think I would easily give this like a 4 out of 5 stars, man. What a hell of a movie, dude. What a hell of a movie. And the effects, man, the gore, it's so good. It's such a massive improvement over the biker bullshit and everything else that we got in the previous film that were so dry and boring and dull that I talked about constantly in my review. This is such a better movie. It's so much more engaging, with better characters and performances and everything. The directing, the budget, all of it. It's just better all around. Anyway, Friday the 13th, the final chapter. What did you think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below. And again, please check out my two friends' channels, Goosebumps Boy and also Stranger Grayson. Those guys make great content. They're very underappreciated, in my personal opinion. They both deserve a lot more subscribers, a lot more views. Anyway, thank you all for being here. God bless you guys, and goodbye.